So here we're looking at the chart of the degenerate SOB who was president a few years ago and who now, by plenty of data points, appears to be on the brink, on the verge of being charged with something quite serious. And I should add that not content with all the criminality he engaged in prior to being president, as well as during his presidency, he continued to commit crimes after he left office, because that's what this man is. This man is basically a lifelong criminal. Now, it is looking like he is almost certainly going to be facing the music, and soon as well. And so, if we look at his chart, we can see that we first ponder the fast-moving planets. Venus is in early Leo. That doesn't tell us very much. The sun being in Gemini, again, doesn't tell us a lot. If anything, under different circumstances, this would be a perfectly fine period for him around his birthday. Problem is that it isn't because of the context of the situation where he finds himself in. So in that sense, the sun, currently at 16 degrees Gemini, moving toward this Uranus in the next couple of days, pretty much indicates continued bad news, as has been the case for some time now. And then the Mercury, traveling Mercury, pretty quick, up near the midheaven and soon to reach the zenith. Again, not a positive thing in the sense that it's highlighting, in fact, the very topic that he is being prosecuted for, which is records mismanagement. And you certainly can point to Mercury as the planet that is often most indicative of that. And so those are the minor ones. But when we look at the bigger influences, then we really start to see the problem, because at the moment, Mars is transiting through Leo and going over his Pluto probably has him in a rage, which is a frequent occurrence in any case for this man. But Mars going through Leo, which again, in a different context, could be quite nice, is yet another influence that in the current situation is problematic, because as it's moving toward the ascendant, it'll eventually conjoin itself, square the MC, square the zenith. None of that is good, especially because of the way this man relates to his Mars. It's all vulgarity, aggression, belligerence, or in other words, constantly complicating the situation. Instead of pulling back, he just keeps making it worse and worse. And now when we go to the main transiting planets, which would be starting from Jupiter and moving all the way to Eris, trans-Saturnian planets, then we notice that Jupiter in Taurus up here in the current degrees is making one of what you will see are several quincunxes, inconjuncts, from Taurus, early degrees, to the Neptune. These aspects are not only problematic in matters of health, including very dangerous health matters, as in you could literally die. It's one of the most dangerous aspects in that way. But absent that, they are not well-adjusted angles, meaning whatever the situation the person finds themselves in, they are unable to sort through it. The possibility of errors increases. It's plain and simple, not a great aspect in the context, again, of the situation that he is in. So Jupiter is not helpful. And if you look at it as, well, it's elevated in his chart, and so it's putting him in a great deal of increased public profile, well, that's true, except that fame and infamy, they're two sides of a coin. And the way this situation is unfolding for this man, to my understanding, this is moving more and more toward infamy, toward basically a total disaster. And the Jupiter, in that sense, is not helping. Part of the reason is that this Jupiter at birth, despite the fact that it's a strong planet being stationary at his birth and trying his sun and supporting his moon, it's also in square to his 12th sign planets, and that is never good when you've committed crimes, since the 12th is basically where you commit them. And the Jupiter is wired that way, and now it's circulating in a threatening manner, which, again, in a different context, would be perfectly okay, but not for him. And you start to really see this more and more clearly when you see Saturn, the key accountability planet, stationing at 7 degrees Pisces. See here in their ephemeris, June 18th, and first of all, alone on a planet making a station in the 8th sign and in sign square to his sun and moon, that already is a problem all by itself. Even though upon a quick scan, you would say, well, yeah, but 7 degrees, sun and moon are much later. The square hasn't happened yet. It'll happen later, next year, the year after. Yes, that's true. However, there's the fact that it's in that house and it's squaring the sign. And secondly, there's the fact that from 7 degrees Pisces, you then hop over in this direction such that you are pretty close to a sesqui square to the natal Saturn, 135 degrees. It's a little bit off by a couple of degrees, but it definitely counts in the sense that when a planet is stationing, the aspect is enhanced. So a sesqui square turns into on the level of the power of a square, which again is not good, especially in the house that it's in. And then we look at Uranus, and it's up here at 20 degrees, and this is a planet that, first of all, at birth, 17 degrees Gemini, opposite the moon. When you're in the kind of jam that he's in, this kind of energy circulating is never going to be helpful. As it's moving toward the midheaven and gaining, ascendancy that way, gaining elevation, that is, and moving in this direction, it's going to profile itself as the co-ruler of the seventh sign, Aquarius, and that gives you the feeling of the fact that his enemies are gaining the upper hand, and that the seventh can be your partner, of course, but it's also the person you are in combat with, and it's why the seventh is often associated with litigation, being sued or suing someone, but again, not a good planet to have there, particularly in light of the fact that in that position, it's also moving toward the square to Mars and to the ascendant eventually. So he's in years where this planet is not helpful at all and will tend to contribute to scandal and infamy much more than to, for example, the idea that Uranus could liberate you, free you from something. I think in this case, if anything, it's the total opposite. And then we see the especially complicated factors, the complications that arise when you see that Neptune is transiting in late Pisces, and what it's doing is it's doing a 150 in this direction to the natal Mars, and that together with the fact that Pluto will be retrograding back into Capricorn very soon and will spend the rest of the year in the late Capricorn degrees, what you've got is two planets in the sky that are kind of close to sextiling each other, but in doing so they're doing a quincunx, a 150 to the natal Mars. This is the kind of thing that can be very dangerous to a person's health, particularly when you see that the Pluto is in the 6th, which is a health house, the Neptune is in the 8th, which is the death house, and Mars is in the first sign, the ascending sign, which is associated with the body. Not a good thing at all. And so you look at aspects like this, and you would say that it might even turn out that the major legal jam that he finds himself in could turn out to be the least of his problems. But I'll finish with that because that is the topic, this impending legal doom, the likelihood of being charged for obstruction of justice, if not perhaps even for espionage on account of what he's done. Then we see Eris is up here in the 9th sign in his chart, which is the pure legal house in any chart. You see it here in July, stationing at 25. This planet moves at a glacial speed, very slow. So it's going to be in these degrees for years and years to come. This is what I've said in other videos, connects him to constant problems from the female gender because Eris is a female warrioress and it's seeking revenge and retribution, his favorite two words, because of his awful behavior throughout the years toward women. Now it's come home to roost. And so that's one topic. He's already faced it to great extent through judges, politicians, various women that in his eyes would be, well, they're out to get me. They are, it's true, and they will get him. But it's also a planetary body traveling through a house. It starts there, so it's already in that house at birth, the 9th, and it continues to be in that house. But now it's locked into a square to Venus. Venus is a really important planet in this chart. It rules the 10th, which is his career, his reputation. The Eris in a square is not helping at all, not one bit. Venus also is connected in his chart, that is, his natal Venus is connected to the 3rd, which is, in fact, where you will find records once again. This whole thing is very, very ironic because this idiot spent all kinds of time in 2016 besmirching Hillary Clinton on account of her supposedly horrible email scandal because there were a few emails marked confidential, blah, blah, blah. A total nothing burger compared to what this criminal traitor has pulled off in the way he has behaved toward the government, toward the American people, in breaking very serious laws in regard to the handling of classified information. So I would say, in all likelihood, he's going to be charged for the records matter this month, perhaps next month at the latest, and then we will have to see what happens in August, when you may have heard me say separately in other videos and in collaborations that it happens to be a particularly important month in that something very important changes in his life, and as in practically everything that is happening to this man in a downward sense because of all the crimes he has committed. What can you say? Couldn't happen to a nicer guy.